During a typhoon alert, Joyce Lane calls me and tells me to pick her up from her company. On the way there, I receive a text from her. "You don't have to pick me up anymore. I'm going to stay over at Finn's place for a few days." I opted not to start anything with her. Instead, I calmly text back, "Okay." In the middle of the night, Finley Jones, Joyce's junior at work, uploads a social media post that's meant for my eyes only. Boys can be seen huddling against Finley while feeding him some snacks. In the photo, the window outside depicts a storm. The caption writes, "It's only befitting for me to tide out the worst weather with the woman I love the most." I leave a like on the photo calmly. Suddenly, Joyce calls me and demands what that like means. I reply, coolly, "It means we're breaking up." On the third day after the typhoon passed, Joyce Lane finally contacted me. The text read, "Come pick me up at Finn's place. He's busy, can't drive me back." In the past, whenever she called, I would drop everything and go. This time, I replied, while waiting for my oatmeal to finish cooking, "Take a cab." Half an hour later, Joyce dragged her suitcase through the door, her face dark with irritation. "I just got home and you're already eating." I paused, spoon halfway to my mouth, and looked up at her, confused with an impatient huff. Joyce shrugged off her coat. "Stop eating and wash the clothes in my suitcase first. The power at Finn's house got knocked out by the typhoon yesterday. I didn't even get to shower." With that, she walked toward the bathroom. "I'm busy. Just toss them in the washing machine," I said evenly. Joyce stopped in her tracks. She frowned, glaring at me with clear displeasure. "Harry, are you done sulking yet? The typhoon was dangerous. We're taking forever to get there. So I stayed at Finn's." "What's the matter? Does my safety mean nothing to you, or are you seriously that jealous?" I swallowed the last spoonful of oatmeal, carried the bowl to the kitchen and chose not to argue. But Joyce kept staring at me. After a moment, as if she'd figured something out, she started scolding me again. "You're still hung up over that post on my Instagram feed, aren't you? I already told you it was just a joke. The second he saw you'd liked it, he panicked and deleted it. He even asked me to explain it to you. You're a grown man. Why are you being so petty with a youngster like him?" I almost laughed. Finley Jones was 28, only a year younger than me. Somehow in her eyes, he was a youngster and I was a grown man. The conversation was going nowhere. I cleaned up the dishes and said calmly, "I really don't have time to wash your clothes. I'm heading out." Joyce looked surprised. Normally, I would have argued back by now. Instead, I stayed perfectly calm. Her expression shifted again and again. Just as I stepped out of the living room, she suddenly walked up and kissed me there. "Happy now?" Joyce shot me a proud, almost smug look, as if my emotions were entirely under her control. I instinctively pushed her away. A wave of nausea hit me. Even when Joyce was in the wrong, Joyce had never stooped to this, never tried to coax me with a kiss. Yet here she was doing it for Finley's sake. Judging by the looks of it, whatever could have happened between them in those 3 days probably did. Casually wiped my face and headed to the door to change my shoes. Joyce stared at me in disbelief. "Harry, what's that supposed to mean? Are you disgusted with me?" "No," I replied. "Just a bit of a germaphobe." Joyce was just about to lose her temper when my phone rang. My ride share had arrived downstairs. Seeing me about to leave, she suddenly grabbed my arm. Her expression turned strangely flustered. "What's gotten into you today? Where are you going?" "Work." Joyce heaved a sigh of relief and said with a cold expression, "Cancel the ride. I'll drive you." Her car was a gift from me, yet she rarely ever let me ride in it. This sudden display of consideration was unprecedented. Was about to refuse, but she had already grabbed the keys from the entryway and walked ahead. Typical of her, she strode ahead with her usual assertiveness. Left with no choice, I canceled the ride and followed her downstairs. The moment I sat in the passenger seat, I noticed an animation sticker stuck to the dashboard. It read, "Boyfriend's exclusive seat." Joyce had always been meticulous, and she hated unnecessary decorations in her car. It was obvious who had stuck the sticker there. Joyce glanced at my expression as if waiting for me to say something. There were always so many things involving Finley, and every time I asked in the past, I got chewed out. This time, I said nothing. 10 minutes later, Joyce suddenly smacked the steering wheel and snapped at me. "Cat, got your tongue. Ask what you wanna ask." I looked at her puzzled. "I don't have anything to ask." Joyce fumed silently for a long moment before she finally spoke. Her face stiffened. "That sticker, Finn put it on. I figured the car needed washing soon, so I didn't stop him. There's nothing going on between him and me, so don't get all jealous over nothing," I hummed non-committally. Honestly, I didn't care what happened between them anymore. Joyce glanced at me continuing, "When the typhoon hit, I stayed at his place because I was worried about your safety on the road and young and staying alone. and I figured I might as well keep him company. But I only think of him as a junior, nothing else. Don't overthink. I nodded, understanding. He's your junior and you're his senior. I trust that nothing is going on between you guys. In the past, every time Joyce and Finley got caught up in each other, I'd get jealous and make a fuss. She'd always fall back on those same words to placate me. Now I use those words to show my understanding. She suddenly glared at me in anger. What's with that sarcastic tone? I've explained everything to you. What are you still unhappy about? Pushing your luck, are you? I responded helplessly. No, really, I don't think you did anything wrong. Before I could finish, Joyce slammed the brakes and shouted, Get out of the car. I was confused, but I opened the car door and stepped out. I had barely taken a few steps when I heard her calling my name. I didn't look back. Instead, I quickened my pace. I honestly didn't understand why she had blown up when I minded her being with Finley. She called me petty and narrow-minded. I finally went along with her. She saw red. It was impossible to please someone like her. There was about half a mile left to the office, so I walked. Today I was going in to submit my resignation. Back then, Joyce was the reason I chose to stay in the city. I even refused to inherit my family's estate, severing ties with my parents completely. 3 days ago, when the typhoon hit, I put my life on the line to pick Joyce up. However, she refused to come home with me. On the way back, the storm was raging and debris struck my shoulder. Oh, couldn't sleep that night from the pain. Then I saw Finley's Instagram post, and told Joyce I was breaking up with her. The combination of physical pain and mental torment almost broke me. It was at that moment that I received a call from my parents. How the news said there's a typhoon there. Stay in and stay safe. Listening to their concerned voices, I, a grown man, actually broke down. The love I had fought for so hard ended up feeling like a joke. I promised to return and take over the family business, and I booked a flight for the day after tomorrow. As for my relationship with Joyce, it was over. At the office, I submitted my resignation to my boss, Quincy Chance. He didn't seem surprised. Instead, he gave me a serious look and said, Harry, both fight all the time. If you smooth things over, it's fine. Don't you worry that Joyce might never forgive you if this escalates. Only then did I realize Joyce had called him beforehand. Quincy continued, She told me to let you know she's blocked you. She's not coming home tonight. She wants you to reflect on your actions. I'd argued with Joyce countless times, but we'd never dragged anyone else into it. This was her way of reminding me who was in charge. In the past, I would have been terrified of losing her, ready to throw away my pride to make peace. This time, I only found it tedious. I explained the breakup and told Quincy the resignation was carefully considered. Nancy still couldn't believe it. You've loved Joyce all these years. Are you really ready to leave? I nodded firmly. Only then did he sigh and process my resignation. When I arrived home, Joyce, who should have been out, appeared before me. She wore a brand new dress and twirled before Finley, smiling radiantly in. How do I look? You look stunning, Joyce, Finley exclaimed, his eyes shining, brimming with possessiveness. When I passed by, Joyce shot me a look, then moved right up to Finley, her voice soft and seductive. Can you help me with this zipper? Finley gave me a pointed look, pretending to hesitate. Joyce, are you sure that's okay? Isn't it better to let Harry help you? Joyce snorted. What? Why would it not be okay? Just do it. And right in front of me, she let Finley zip up her dress, and walked out, linking her arm with him intimately. I knew she was trying to provoke me. In the past, seeing her act so close to Finley would have driven me mad. I'd have stopped her from leaving. Now I felt nothing but calm. Late that night, I was suddenly woken by a call. It was Joyce's best friend, Queenie Stone. Harry, Joyce is drunk. Come get her at the Imperial Club. She even sent a photo. In it, Joyce was leaning against Finley, holding him closely around the neck. In the past, Joyce's friends had always disliked me, thought I was lame, and secretly rooted for Joyce and Finley to be together. Now, for the first time, one of them was calling me to pick Joyce up. I was puzzled, when suddenly I heard the sound of glass shattering. Over the phone, Joyce yelled, Stop calling him. I don't need him. He's broken up with me anyway. I'm going home with Finn tonight. Queenie quickly interjected, Harry, if you don't come, Joyce will leave with Finley. I yawned. That's good. Finley is great at taking care of her. That I hung up and went back to sleep. Sometime later, I heard the front door open. A few moments later, my bedroom door was pushed open. Joyce stormed in, pointing at me. Harry, why didn't you come get me? Aren't you afraid something might happen between Finn and me? I rubbed my blurry eyes, my mind still foggy. Back then, if Joyce stayed out late and ignored my calls, I'd search everywhere for her. I finally found her at a bar. She'd yelled at me in front of everyone. Harry, why are you so controlling? I need my freedom. I could still remember the mocking looks her friends had shot me this time. I kept my distance and yet Joyce still came at me like I've done something wrong. I was genuinely dumbfounded. I took a deep breath and said calmly, "You're an adult. You know your limits. Besides, you're supposed to live your life freely and do whatever you want." Joyce froze for a moment at my calmness. He stared at my face for a long beat. Then a glint of realization flickered in her eyes. A faint half-smile tugged at her lips as she said, "So you are jealous that photo Queenie sent?" I just stumbled and ended up in Finn's arms by accident. I yawned and looked at the time. It was 2 in the morning. Joyce continued, "If it bothers you that much, can just bring you along next time I go drinking?" When I didn't reply, she hesitated, then grew a bit impatient. "You'd only be happy if I stopped seeing Finn entirely, right?" I shook my head helplessly. "No, I trust there's nothing going on between you two." I couldn't help but yawn again. "I'm tired. Can we talk tomorrow?" A hint of hurt crossed Joyce's face, and her gaze held a perplexity I couldn't quite decipher. A few seconds later, she suddenly stepped forward, slipped off her coat, climbed onto the bed and wrapped her arms around me. In a low voice, she said, "Harry, what's going on? Are you upset because I've been cold towards you these past few days? Make it up to you, now okay?" Her hands drifted downward. Back then, if she had done something like this, I would have jumped at the chance. Now I stopped her. "Sorry, I'm too tired, not in the mood." Joyce's face went rigid. Then she suddenly erupted in anger. She slapped me hard, cursed at me and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I heard the living room door open, so I guess Joyce had left. In the past, if she'd gone out in the middle of the night, I would have chased after her immediately. But this time, I turned off the lights and went back to sleep. I didn't know where Joyce went, but I knew she would be fine. When I woke up the next morning, she still hadn't returned. My flight home was tomorrow. I just finished packing when my friend called to set up a farewell dinner for me. When I was dating Joyce, she wouldn't let me go out drinking, and even restricted me from hanging out with my friends. Over the past year, my friends and I barely got together. Now that I was leaving, I wanted to have a proper night out drinking with my friends. I checked into a hotel and headed straight to the private room downstairs. Everyone at the table was an old friend I'd known for years, except for one unfamiliar face, a young woman in her early 20s. My friend, Calvin Walker, smiled as he introduced her to me. "This is Bianca Cooper, my junior at work. She's also heading back to Justin soon. You're both from the same hometown, so I thought you two should meet." Everyone egged me on to get her contact information. I smiled and took the initiative, scanning her WhatsApp QR code. Right after I did that, Joyce's furious voice rang out behind me. "Harry!" I turned stunned. Joyce stood in the doorway of the private room, still in last night's dress, mascara smudged under her eyes like she hadn't slept. Everyone at the table went quiet. Calvin's smile dropped. Someone coughed. Someone else quietly muted their phone. Joyce's eyes swept from my phone, still open to Bianca's contact card, to Bianca herself, sitting close enough that our shoulders had brushed. Her voice cracked through the silence. "Who is this?" Bianca, calm and unbothered, offered her hand. "Hi, I'm Bianca. And you are?" Joyce ignored her completely, stormed across the room, and snatched my phone out of my hand. I let her take it. I didn't fight for it. That, more than anything, seemed to unsettle her. In the old days, I would have apologized on reflex, explained myself before she even finished asking. Instead I just watched her scroll through my messages, looking for something, anything, to be angry about. She found nothing, because there was nothing to find. That seemed to make her angrier. She threw the phone onto the table. "You're out drinking with strange women, the day after I got home upset, and you didn't even think to call me." I almost laughed at the audacity. "You spent 3 nights at Finn's place," I said evenly. "Last night you told me over the phone you were going home with him." "I don't see the difference." The table went dead silent. Joyce's face went through about 4 different colors. "That's different," she snapped. "Finn is just my junior. I told you nothing happened." I nodded slowly. "And Bianca is just Calvin's junior. Nothing happened here either. See, we're even." Calvin, God bless him, tried to diffuse things. "Joyce, maybe we should step outside and talk." Joyce cut him off, rounding on me instead. "Is this how you're going to be? Tit for tat? Getting back at me?" I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and looked at her properly for what felt like the first time in months. "No, Joyce, I'm not getting back at you. I already told you on the phone. It means we're breaking up." I never took it back. Her mouth opened and closed. For once, she had nothing to say. I turned to my friends. "I'm sorry, everyone. I think I should call it a night." I picked my phone back up off the table, nodded to Bianca, "Thank you for understanding," and walked out. Behind me, I heard my friend Marcus mutter, Low enough he probably thought I wouldn't catch it. That man has been way too patient for way too long. No one at the table defended Joyce. Not one person. For 6 years I'd watched her friends close ranks around her. Every time we fought. Watched them roll their eyes at me, behind her back like I was the punchline of some private joke. Tonight, in a room full of people who actually knew both of us, the silence had been its own verdict. I didn't look back to see Joyce's face. I didn't need to. I already knew what came next, because it always came next. Sure enough, before I'd made it to the elevator, she caught up, grabbing my sleeve. Harry, wait. Her voice had changed completely, soft now, trembling in a way I used to fall for every single time. I'm sorry. I've just been so stressed lately with work, and Finn's been going through a hard time, and I took it out on you. I didn't mean any of it. Can we go home and talk properly? A year ago those words would have dissolved every ounce of my resolve. I would have folded, apologized for things that weren't my fault, and spent the rest of the night trying to make her smile again. Now I just felt tired. The way you feel after finally putting down something heavy you didn't realize you'd been carrying for years. Joyce, I said quietly, my flight is tomorrow morning. I'm going home. Not our home. My actual home. I'm taking over my family's company. Her grip on my sleeve loosened. What are you talking about? You don't even talk to your parents. I do now, I said. I have for a while. You just never asked. She followed me all the way down to the lobby, alternating between pleading and accusing. Between are you seriously leaving me over this and you'll regret this? You know that, right? Nobody will ever love you the way I did. I let her get it all out. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't even raise my voice. By the time the elevator doors closed between us, she'd gone quiet, staring at me with an expression I'd never seen on her before, something close to fear, like she was only now beginning to understand that the ground beneath her had actually moved. The truth was, I'd been talking to my parents again for almost 8 months, quietly, in increments, rebuilding a bridge I'd once burned to prove my loyalty to a woman who never once extended me the same courtesy. My father ran Cross Meridian Holdings, a name Joyce had heard 100 times at industry dinners without ever once connecting it to me, because I'd made sure of that. I never wanted her to love me for what I could give her. I wanted her to love me for showing up, for staying, for choosing her over everything, including my own name. She never noticed the difference, because to her, I'd always just been Harry, the steady, boring, endlessly patient one, who'd do anything to keep her. She wasn't wrong. I had been all those things. I just hadn't realized how much of myself I'd sanded down to fit into the shape she wanted. It started 3 years into our relationship. My father had wanted me to join the family business straight out of university. Joyce hated the idea, said corporate families were cold, said she didn't want to spend her life being polite to board members' wives at charity dinners. I chose her. I told my father I was staying in the city, taking a job at a mid-sized logistics firm instead, starting from the bottom like anyone else. He didn't yell. He just went quiet in a way that was worse than yelling, and told me the door would close behind me if I walked through it. I walked through it anyway. For 2 years we barely spoke. My mother called sometimes, in secret, just to hear my voice, always hanging up before my father got home. I told myself it was worth it. I told myself Joyce was worth it. I never once told Joyce what it had cost me, because some small, stubborn part of me wanted to believe I hadn't given anything up at all, that loving her was enough of a reason on its own. The night of the typhoon changed that. Listening to my mother's voice shake over the phone, asking if I was safe, if I'd eaten, if I needed anything, I realized I'd spent 2 years punishing the people who never stopped worrying about me to protect a relationship with someone who hadn't worried about me once. The flight home was quiet. Bianca, coincidentally, sat 2 rows behind me. Justin was a smaller city than people assumed, and it turned out we had more mutual connections than either of us guessed. We talked for most of the flight, easily, without effort, about nothing important, her new job at a design firm, my father's stubbornness about modernizing the company's logistics arm, her opinion that typhoon season made for excellent tea-drinking weather. Somewhere over the water she asked, carefully, if I wanted to talk about what happened at the restaurant. I told her the short version. 6 years, a proposal I'd been quietly planning before all this started. A ring I still had sitting in a drawer I hadn't opened in months. She didn't say anything comforting or performative. She just said, for what it's worth, you handled that better than most people would have. It was the first conversation I'd had in years that didn't leave me feeling like I'd failed some invisible test. My mother cried when she saw me at the gate. My father, ever composed, just gripped my shoulder and said, about time. We have a lot of work to do. I didn't tell them about Joyce. I didn't need to. They'd met her exactly twice in 6 years, both times at her insistence. Both times because she wanted something photographed for her social media, once at a gala, once at a groundbreaking ceremony, where she'd worn white to a company event, and complained for a week that no one had recognized her. 3 months passed. I threw myself into the company the way I once threw myself into Joyce, completely, without reservation, learning every department from the ground up. My father gave me logistics first, the division everyone said was unsalvageable, a graveyard posting, according to the board, the kind of assignment you give a son you're testing rather than one you're grooming. There was a man on the board, Desmond Cade, who'd been with my father for 20 years and made no secret of thinking I was a liability, a prodigal son playing dress-up in a suit he hadn't earned. In my first board meeting he asked, in front of everyone, whether I intended to run the division, or simply borrow its title until something more interesting came along. I didn't argue with him. I just asked for 90 days and told him I'd let the numbers answer for me. I didn't sleep much. I didn't date. I definitely didn't check Joyce's Instagram, though Queenie Stone, of all people, occasionally sent me updates I never asked for. Joyce and Finn are Instagram official now. Joyce got a new car, tagged Finn in every post. Joyce quit her job to manage Finn's public image full-time. I read them without much feeling, the way you'd read a weather report for a city you no longer lived in. Logistics was bleeding money on a single failing contract, a shipping partnership my father's old advisors had signed years earlier out of loyalty rather than logic. I spent 6 weeks renegotiating it from the ground up, flying out twice to sit across from partners who'd never taken a meeting with anyone under 50 before, let alone the boss' son. Bianca, it turned out, had a knack for reading rooms that I didn't. She sat in on 2 of those meetings as a favor, technically representing her design firm's interest in the rebrand, and quietly pointed out the one clause everyone else had missed. I paid her firm properly for the work. She teased me for weeks about expensing her opinions. By month 5, logistics had gone from the company's worst performing division to its most profitable. Desmond Cade didn't apologize. Men like him rarely do. But at the next board meeting he was the one who moved to second my proposal for the coastal hub expansion, and that, from him, was as close to respect as I was ever going to get. My father started introducing me at board meetings not as his son, but as the next CEO, a title I hadn't asked for and wasn't sure I wanted, until I realized I did want it, not for the power, but because for the first time in years, something in my life was growing instead of shrinking. Bianca and I fell into an easy rhythm. Coffee, some mornings before work, because it turned out her firm was 2 blocks from my new office. Dinner some Fridays, because Calvin had moved back too, and insisted on group hangouts that always somehow ended with just the 2 of us splitting the bill. I liked that she never asked about Joyce. I liked that she never treated my last name like currency. Not once it came out, and it did come out, eventually, when a business journal ran a profile on Cross Meridian's turnaround under new leadership, with my photo on the cover. Bianca's only comment had been, "So that's why you always insist on paying for coffee." Guilt or habit? Neither, I told her. I just like taking care of people who deserve it. Joyce found out who I really was the way most of the city did, from the same business journal cover, forwarded to her, according to Queenie, by no fewer than 6 different people within the same hour. She called me that night. I almost didn't answer. Curiosity won. "Harry." Her voice was different, careful, testing. "I saw the article. Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" I asked. "That my name was Harry Cross. You knew my name for 6 years. There was a long pause. "I mean about the company, about your family, about everything you gave up for me. If I'd known, I would have." "You would have, what?" I said, cutting her off, not unkindly, just honestly. "Not stayed at Finn's during the typhoon? Not put a boyfriend's exclusive seat sticker in your car for someone who wasn't your boyfriend? Not slapped me for being too tired to sleep with you the same night you came home smelling like someone else's cologne?" Silence. "I don't think knowing would have changed anything, Joyce. I think it would have just given you a better reason to keep me around." She started crying, the kind of crying that used to end every fight in her favor. It didn't work anymore. I let her cry. When she finally spoke again, her voice had lost its performance. "Finn left," she said quietly, 2 weeks ago. "There was someone else. There'd been someone else for a while. Actually, someone he met managing his account after I quit my job to do it for him. I didn't want to admit any of it, because admitting it meant admitting I threw away something real for something that was never going to be real to begin with. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, gently, because there was no cruelty left in me by then, only a kind of distant sympathy, I said, "I'm sorry that happened to you, truly, but I don't think there's anything left for us to talk about. Take care of yourself, Joyce." I hung up before she could answer. I thought that would be the last time we spoke. It wasn't, Quite. The coastal hub opened 7 months to the day after that typhoon, my project from the ground up. The one that finally convinced the board I was ready for the corner office. My father had started clearing out for me without telling me. The opening drew press from 3 cities, half the board, old family friends I hadn't seen since I was a teenager, and, apparently, Joyce Lane, who I later learned had come as the +1 of a junior reporter covering the event, angling for a 5-minute interview with the new CEO she used to share a bathroom with. I saw her before she saw me, standing near the harbor railing and dressed to formal for a press event, scanning the crowd the way she used to scan a room for exits. When our eyes finally met, she didn't approach right away. She waited until the ribbon cutting was over, until most of the cameras had turned elsewhere, and then she crossed the pier toward me, the reporter trailing a step behind her, notebook forgotten. "Congratulations," she said, and for once there was no performance in it, just something quiet and a little hollow. "This is incredible, Harry. It really is. I always knew you were capable of more. I never made room for you to be it." I nodded. "Thank you for saying that." She hesitated, glancing at Bianca, who stood a few feet away talking with my mother like they'd known each other for years. "I heard you two are together now." I didn't answer that. It wasn't a question that needed one. Instead I said, "Are you doing okay, Joyce?" She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Define okay?" "I quit my job for a man who left me the second someone more interesting walked into his DMs. I've spent the last 2 months trying to remember who I was before I built my whole life around being needed by somebody." There was no anger in her voice anymore, just exhaustion. The particular exhaustion of someone finally seeing themselves clearly after years of only ever looking at their reflection in someone else's eyes. "I'm sorry it took losing everything for you to get there," I told her, honestly. "But for what it's worth, I hope you find it. Whoever you were before all this." She studied my face for a long moment, like she was looking for the old Harry, the one who would have reached for her hand, who would have offered to help, who would have let her back in just because she'd finally said something true. That Harry wasn't standing on the pier anymore. She seemed to understand that, finally, all at once. "Take care of yourself, Harry," she said quietly, and walked away without waiting for me to say it back. I watched her go until she disappeared into the crowd, and then I felt Bianca's hand slip into mine, not asking anything, just there. "Okay," she asked. "Okay," I said, and meant it. A year to the day after that typhoon, I stood on that same pier again, this time at sunset. No press, no board members, just my parents, Calvin, Queenie, who, strangely, had become a friend of mine, in her own right somewhere along the way, and Bianca, in a green dress she swore wasn't chosen to match my tie, though I noticed. She asked me, half joking, if I regretted any of it, the resignation, the flight home, walking away from 6 years of a life I'd built around someone else. I thought about the man I'd been that night, soaked from the storm, aching, waiting by a phone that would never ring the way he needed it to, promising a woman who wasn't listening that he'd give up anything to keep her. "No," I told her. "I don't regret a single day of it. It just took a typhoon to show me I'd been standing in the rain long enough." I reached into my jacket pocket, not for the ring I'd once bought for someone else, that one I'd finally, quietly, sold months ago. No ceremony to it, just a small private closing of a door, but for a new one. One I'd been carrying around for 3 weeks waiting for the right moment, and it turned out the right moment was a Tuesday, on a pier, with the tide coming in. Bianca said yes before I'd even finished the question, laughing through it, and Queenie, of all people, cried harder than my mother. Somewhere, a few hundred miles away, a woman I used to love was learning, slowly and far too late, that the quietest man in the room is sometimes the one with the most to walk away with, and the most, in the end, to build. I never looked back. I never needed to.